Hey everyone, and welcome to my review for Mask of Mists. This review is specific to the PS5 version of the game, and all gameplay in this video was captured on a PS5 console. I should also mention that a review code was supplied to me by the publisher. The channel's just passed 800 subscribers and we're moving ever closer to that 1000 milestone, so if you enjoy this video or find it useful, please do take a moment to click the subscribe button for more content like this. On this channel, I do my reviews a bit differently. I'm going to give you the facts, then move on to some personal opinion on the positive and negative aspects of the game, and finally, we'll end the video with a conclusion and recommendation. So what is this game all about? Well, it's a first-person adventure game with some light combat and puzzle elements. It's developed by Nine Eyes Game Studio and published primarily by Sometimes You. I believe they also had some help from a small two-man studio named Stately Snail, and I just had to mention them so that I could show you this brilliant logo. The game itself reminds me of one of those old text adventures where you would type things in like pick up sword or use key indoor and the game would respond back to you. It's basically like that, but in a first-person and real-time format. The game's actually been out for over a year already on PC and nearly a year on last-gen consoles. The version I'm playing here seems to be a PS5/Series X version, although I've had no official information provided to me about what that actually means in terms of game performance or upgrades. However, when I redeemed the review code, the game is marked as PS5 with the PS4 version being separately listed. All I can say for sure is that it runs very well and I had no crashes, bugs, or glitches in my time playing it. I don't have any way of properly analyzing this, but the frame rate seemed to be a solid 60 FPS. Resolution-wise, I'm unsure of exactly what it's running at, but it does look very sharp and very clean to me on my 4K Samsung TV. This version has an official release date of August 25th, 2021. In the game, you play as a mercenary who's been tasked with finding a missing person. That missing person is an archmage who's disappeared while conducting some research into the infected territory. To find him, you'll need to fight off magical creatures, collect lots of items to solve puzzles, create potions and explore caves, abandoned houses and ancient ruins. The game is quite short and can be finished in under 2 hours if you know exactly where you're going and what to do. Although if you're playing completely blind like I was, then I would estimate probably around 3.5 to 4 hours, which is roughly how long my playthrough took me. Most of your time in game will be spent exploring the world to find items which you can then use to solve basic puzzles or access new areas. It's very much a case of I need this key to get through this door, but that key is located across a broken bridge. So I could cut this tree down to make a secondary bridge, but I don't have an axe, so where is the axe? A lot of progression works that way, but you'll occasionally stumble across some scrolls that will give you hints and clues on how to proceed. I only ever got stumped for a solution once, and I won't spoil it, but it basically involved a locked door with no handle or key slot. The solution was honestly really simple, but it just wasn't obvious. I don't know if I perhaps missed a clue somewhere or something, but either way, you'll know it if you get to it. You can also use various items you find in the world to create potions for things like health recovery and to remove rust from certain objects in the game world. Due to the way the game works, I believe that there is only a limited amount of each one. So, for example, if the game only has 3 places that you can use an anti-rust potion, you will only ever be able to create 3 in total. There's also some collectibles in the form of 10 stone masks that can be found hidden around the game world. Collecting all 10 will net you a trophy or achievement. Combat-wise, the gameplay is very simple. You'll have access to a sword on the right trigger and a pistol on the left trigger. You can discover upgraded versions of these as you progress, but there aren't any other weapons to be found in the game. The sword has simple slash attacks, while the pistol's shots are powerful, but limited by ammo, which again you can only find a certain amount of. You can also do a quick dash by pressing square or use a healing potion with triangle. You can jump with circle, and the cross button is for interacting or using objects in the world. There's only a few different enemy types in the game and most can be beaten simply by circling around them, although they can be quite dangerous in groups. The first and most common enemy that you'll fight is probably the slime, but there are a few others later in the game that have unique attacks which can do things like slow you down or reflect your damage. There is, of course, a boss fight at the end, but I won't spoil that here. And as I've said already, this game is relatively short and relatively simple, so I think that's about all there is to tell you without spoiling anything else, so let's move on to the positive opinions. The first thing I want to mention in this section is the fact that I really don't enjoy puzzle games in general. Although things like Match 3 and Tetris style games are okay enough, I'm just not too keen on puzzles in bigger games. In fact, it's the main reason I stopped playing Immortals Fenyx Rising. I loved that game's combat, but the puzzles just bored me and some were mandatory, so I just ended up losing interest. Having said that, Mask of Mist's puzzles are what I would call simple and straightforward. There really isn't anything here that would tax your brain or really make you think, and for me personally, I found that to be a good thing. The game just allowed me to progress at a good rate without ever really feeling like it had a lot of puzzles or getting properly stuck anywhere. Because of the game's small scale and length, the level and puzzle designs had to be far less intricate than you'd imagine, which led me to personally having a good time with the game in general. It just felt more like an adventure game with very minor puzzle elements as opposed to a full-on can't progress until you figure it out puzzle. Everything just seemed to flow very nicely, and when something was given to me, the game world was so easy to remember and navigate that I instantly knew, or at least had some idea of where to go next, which kept the experience feeling positive throughout. Another thing that I noticed when I was in the first dungeon specifically was the music. I'm not much of an audio expert in any way, shape or form, and audio is generally the last thing that's important to me in a video game. I think only a few games have ever really had their music affect me in an emotional way, a soundtrack that I would listen to not only in-game but outside of the game as well. But even then, I do sometimes randomly pick up a piece of music from a game and it just kind of sticks with me and, just sounds right. I don't really know how to explain it, but the music in the dungeons just felt perfect for me. Have a listen to this. I mean, is it the best piece of music ever written? Well, no, it isn't. But for such a small indie game like this, I thought the whole soundtrack was really well done. Also, I thought the game world itself was nicely designed and put together. Now, I realize it's not going for a realistic graphical style, and this is more of a storybook or stylized look, but for what it's trying to achieve, I think it really does accomplish it. I never once got lost. And granted, the world is quite small, but to me, it just felt so well made, and that all the items were in just the right location. They were where I would expect them to be. I suppose the word I'm looking for is intuitive. Whenever you needed something, it always felt like I knew where it was, or at least had a good idea. Now, I would assume that the game had extensive playtesting and was designed to be very compact and quite a tight experience, because there just isn't any wasted space to be found. And I think that's just about all of the main positives that really jumped out to me, so let's look at some negative points. I think the first negative point that I'd like to bring up is one that actually kinda goes against my own personal view of the game. I like that the game is simple and, let's call it, easy to finish. But I think generally speaking, the majority of players who enjoy adventure games like this, and also the old text adventures, don't want them to be this easy. I think that it might actually turn off some people who otherwise may have enjoyed this. I think for those people who enjoy a bit more challenge in their adventure games, they will just find this game to be far too easy. Perhaps some of the puzzles should have had a few more steps to them, or things that were just a bit harder to figure out, or perhaps even a permadeath mode, or a mode with no clues, just something similar like that so that it could be tailored to their experience. Also, I think some people will instantly be turned off by the fact that the game is realistically beaten in under 4 hours. Personally, for me, that was a positive. Even though the game's price matches up to its indie nature and small scale, I think people may just dismiss it. And that would be a shame, because the game is not bad at all in my opinion. The developers set out to make a game in a certain way, and that's exactly what they did. It's not some half-baked, bug-ridden AAA game for full price with added microtransactions. It's exactly the game they wanted to make, and they charge an appropriate price for it. So I suppose this isn't really a negative of the game itself, but more a symptom of modern gaming habits. The game being short isn't the game's problem, but it will no doubt cause people to ignore it, or perhaps think it's not worth their time. But being completely honest, I don't really think there's any more negatives to speak of, at least in my mind. As I just said, the game is exactly the game it was made to be, and it works. So let's move on to the conclusion and recommendation. This game has been out for over a year at this point on last gen, and granted, this version is just a visual and performance upgrade for the PS5 and Series X as far as I can tell. But regardless, I'm glad I got to play it. It's a genre I rarely get to experience, and I'm grateful that I got to try this out and review it for you. I honestly don't know if I would have ever looked twice at this were it not for the review code, but that's the cool thing. The company kindly allowed me to play it, and now I can do my part to show others what the game is about. Maybe one of you who never thought to try this game will now give it a look because of my review, and that's what this is all about. In my personal view, Mask of Mists is a brief but enjoyable adventure which doesn't outstay its welcome and was created by people who care about their work. So who would I recommend it to? Well, that depends. If you're someone who enjoys text adventures or adventure games in general, then of course, I could obviously recommend this to you, but with the added note that you might find it far too easy. With that said though, it isn't very long or expensive, so even if it is too easy for you, it won't eat up your time and won't cost you much money to play. On the other hand, if you're not generally into adventure style games and puzzles really aren't your thing, but perhaps you don't mind trying new things out, I would actually still recommend it to you. It's really simple to play, easy to understand, and I found it to be a relaxing and casual experience. For the low price and low time commitment, I do think it's worth looking at. And finally, this is a recommendation I've never really done, but if you're a trophy or achievement hunter, this game would be a perfect one to pick up. I've done a bit of research and it looks like it can be finished in less than 2 hours with a guide and has a platinum trophy on PlayStation. Also, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it has 2 separate trophy lists for the PS4 and PS5 versions, so that again might be something to consider. And look, even if you get it purely for those trophies or achievements, you'd still be supporting the developers, which is obviously a good thing, and I'm sure that they would still appreciate it. But there you go, that's my review of Mask of Mists, and yeah, I personally found it to be a fun little adventure that was well made and enjoyable for what it was. Yes, it's very easy and short, but for my tastes, that was a positive that helped me enjoy it more than I usually would. The older version is available right now, and the upgraded version is available from August 25th, 2021 on PS5 and Series X. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more like it, please consider clicking that red subscribe button. We're less than 200 away from that 1,000 subscriber milestone, and it looks like we might make it there by Christmas, so please do subscribe if you'd like to be a part of it. If you'd like to chat with me or ask me anything about the game, please feel free to do so in the comments, and if you'd like to help support the channel, the important links are in the video description down below. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.